The European Union remains deeply alarmed after Donald Trump's re-election and his forthcoming entry into the White House. Less than a week after his inauguration as U.S. President, several developments have caused tensions, putting the EU on edge. At a recent public briefing, President-elect Trump reaffirmed his desire to purchase Greenland from Denmark, even hinting at employing military force to achieve this aim. This marks one of the gravest disputes between the United States and the EU in recent memory. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot asserted that the EU would stand firm to protect its boundaries, underscoring the magnitude of the issue. Beyond the Greenland matter, President-elect Trump has vowed to impose tariffs on the EU to shield U.S. industries. Additionally, he has pressed the EU to buy American energy, seeking to reduce Europe's dependence on external sources. These developments indicate that 2025 might pose significant challenges for the EU. The Greenland controversy dates back to 2019 when President Trump first exhibited a genuine intent to acquire Greenland from Denmark. Initially viewed with disbelief, the proposal was swiftly dismissed by Danish and Greenlandic leaders. Trump's motivation stemmed from Greenland's strategic location and its vast reserves of precious resources, including rare earth minerals vital for advanced technologies. As Arctic ice recedes, new maritime lanes may emerge, reducing reliance on established routes like the Panama Canal. Major powers, including Russia and China, are keen to gain a foothold in the Arctic, highlighting Greenland's growing strategic importance. Denmark, which governs Greenland, has consistently rejected any notion of selling the territory. In response to renewed American interest, Denmark has declared expanded Arctic defense measures, including more patrol vessels, enhanced drone capabilities, and additional forces to safeguard Greenland. The EU has become increasingly watchful of Greenland's strategic prominence. Expanded U.S. influence in the region could invite diplomatic tensions, particularly if it challenges the position of smaller EU nations or affiliated regions. Preserving Arctic stability and forestalling clashes triggered by external pressures remain key EU priorities. Energy security remains paramount for Europe, especially amid recent shifts. President-elect Trump has again championed his stance from his first term, insisting that the EU boost its imports of American liquefied natural gas, ING. In a new Truth Social message, Trump declared, "I told the EU they must reduce their massive imbalance with the US by purchasing our oil and gas in large quantities, otherwise, it's tariffs all the way." Previously, Trump criticized nations like Germany for their reliance on Russian supplies and urged diversification, leading to a surge in US LNG shipments to Europe. Currently, the US is the EU's leading LNG provider, representing nearly 48% of the bloc's imports during the first half of 2024. Analysts predict Trump will intensify efforts for Europe to ramp up LNG purchases during his second term, potentially linking new trade agreements to energy deals or enacting sanctions against alternative energy sources. Such developments could exacerbate Europe's challenges, already complicated by high energy prices and diplomatic strains. Aggressive US tactics promoting LNG might disrupt the EU's energy balance, raise energy bills, and hinder green initiatives. Long-term contracts with the US may conflict with Europe's evolving energy priorities, potentially derailing progress towards self-reliance and sustainability. Amid Trump's threats, EU representatives have emphasized their openness to mutual discussions. European Commission spokesperson Olaf Gil remarked, "We stand ready to discuss with President-elect Trump how we can enhance an already solid partnership, including mutual energy interests." However, forging a unified EU stance is challenging due to varying member state priorities. The EU remains committed to scaling down external energy imports, adding complexity to future engagements with the US. The European Union faces a multifaceted energy crisis, worsened by recent incidents. On January 1, 2025, Ukraine halted Russian gas transit to Europe after a pre-war contract expired. Concerned about national safety during a time of strife, Ukraine ended this long-standing supply route. Although the EU has significantly reduced its reliance on Russian gas from 40% in 2021 to under 10% in 2023, certain countries like Austria and Slovakia remain heavily dependent on these supplies and must identify alternatives to avoid shortages. Qatar, a major LNG supplier to Europe, has warned it could discontinue deliveries if the EU advances its Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. This law imposes strict ecological and labor obligations with penalties reaching 5% of global turnover for non-compliance. Qatar's energy minister, Saad Al-Kaabi, has deemed these penalties excessive, suggesting that Qatar might exit the European market, destabilizing the EU's LNG access. Additionally, Europe endures a harsh winter with weaker wind and solar yields, significantly reducing renewable energy output and intensifying grid pressures. This has forced the EU to rely on energy stockpiles, rapidly depleting them and heightening concerns about reliable energy supply. These factors underline the urgency for the EU to diversify its energy mix and enhance security. The end of Russian gas transit via Ukraine, potential discord with key suppliers, and erratic renewable performance expose vulnerabilities in the EU's energy framework. Addressing these challenges is essential to ensuring resilience and sustainability for member states. Elon Musk's recent foray into European political affairs has alarmed EU officials, who fear these interventions may compromise the bloc's cohesion and stability. In December 2024, Musk publicly endorsed Germany's far-right Alternative for Germany (AfD) party, asserting on X, formerly Twitter, that the AfD is Germany's only real hope. He reinforced this position in a Welt am Sonntag op-ed, accusing established parties of systemic failure. This drew widespread outrage from German leaders. Chancellor Olaf Scholz indirectly criticized Musk in his annual address, stressing that electoral outcomes are solely in Germans' hands, not those of social media magnates. Deputy Chancellor Robert Habeck also condemned Musk's moves as an open assault on our democracy. Musk's involvement in British politics has sparked further debate. He criticized Prime Minister Keir Starmer's handling of historic child exploitation cases, alleging inadequate action regarding grooming gangs. Starmer denounced the spread of disinformation on social media, highlighting the harm such untruths inflict on survivors. Musk's statements have fueled online harassment of UK authorities, aggravating tensions. Beyond Germany and Britain, Musk's interventions have alarmed other EU leaders. French President Emmanuel Macron and Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store have expressed concerns about Musk's actions, viewing them as a potential threat to democratic norms. The European Commission is assessing whether Musk's platform complies with EU digital regulations, especially in relation to hate speech and disinformation. Brussels fears Musk's interventions may heighten political friction within individual nations, potentially undermining unity across Europe by promoting extreme viewpoints and amplifying divisive narratives. Musk could embolden radical groups, increasing discord. Compounding the problem are Musk's ties with the upcoming US administration, raising concerns over potential foreign meddling in European affairs. European regulators may pursue stronger rules to prevent external tampering and ensure neutral conditions on digital platforms during election seasons. Their ultimate objective is protecting EU democracy and reinforcing its foundational values against outside stressor. Let's take a quick pause. If you've enjoyed the video so far, could we ask a small favor? Hitting the like button helps us reach a broader audience, and sharing your thoughts or feedback in the comments makes an even bigger impact. Thank you for watching. Now let's dive back in. Donald Trump's latest comments about NATO have sparked worries over the alliance's solidarity and capabilities. Trump insists NATO nations raise their defense budgets to 5% of GDP, a marked jump from the existing 2% guideline. He contends that the US shoulders too much of NATO's financial responsibility and urges Europe to bolster its military spending. His call has ignited disagreement among members, with some European heads reluctant to commit additional defense allocations. In February 2024, Trump proposed that the US might not defend NATO allies failing to reach their budget targets. He even declared he would give Russia free rein toward nations not meeting obligations. Such remarks challenged NATO's core pledge under Article 5 and were rebuked by Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg, who cautioned that these suggestions undermine collective security. Trump's stance could shape NATO in several ways, eroding confidence, doubting US support for each ally, and sparking distrust, jeopardizing NATO's cohesion. Invigorating rivals, signaling conditional protection might embolden powers like Russia to probe NATO's steadfastness, possibly intensifying threats near Eastern Europe. Internal disputes pressuring allies to allocate more could stir discord, particularly among states burdened by economic constraints, potentially fracturing the alliance from within. These evolving circumstances have pushed NATO leaders to reconsider the alliance's trajectory and reaffirm the principle of collective defense as the bedrock of joint security. Climate agreements and green policies. President-elect Donald Trump's recent public statements and legislative priorities have stirred anxiety among climate scientists and international authorities, casting doubt on the continuity of global climate measures. Trump plans to remove the US from the Paris Agreement, a landmark international framework for curbing global emissions. This plan mirrors his 2017 decision to exit the pact during his initial term. The European Union has expressed dismay, with Climate Commissioner Wapke Hra deeming such a move a devastating setback for worldwide progress. He urged other nations to redouble their diplomatic endeavors. The Biden administration approved tax incentives for renewables and clean power, designed to cut costs and speed the adoption of low-carbon solutions. These provisions, part of the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, aim to slash U.S. pollution levels and save consumers billions in utility bills by 2030. However, Trump intends to overturn these incentives, prioritizing fossil fuel expansion. Treasury Deputy Secretary Wally Adu warned that scrapping these policies would hinder U.S. participation in the broader global transition to clean energy. Trump blasted the UK's drive to scale back oil and gas drilling in the North Sea, branding it a major error and pushing for more extraction. This viewpoint conflicts with Britain's strategy to pivot to renewables in pursuit of its climate commitments. Divergent energy pathways between the US and European nations could deepen rifts and undermine collective climate initiatives. Experts caution that Trump's second presidency could promptly hamper environmental progress. His earlier term featured the undoing of critical regulations, and experts foresee similar patterns. Another U.S. exit from multinational climate deals and the prioritization of fossil fuels over renewables could derail international ambitions to tackle the climate emergency. Tech giants and regulation battles. In recent years, the European Union has enacted robust policies targeting tech behemoths, covering privacy, market dominance, and antitrust matters. The EU's objective is to safeguard user data, ensure fair competition, and rein in monopolistic tendencies, primarily affecting American digital heavyweights. With Donald Trump returning to the presidency, a stronger pushback against such European controls may be on the horizon. Notably, Elon Musk, an influential entrepreneur aligned with Trump, has been appointed as co-director of the fresh Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Musk's new sway could encourage a tougher response to EU rules viewed as inimical to American tech firms. U.S. tech titans like Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, and Tim Cook may find a more receptive climate in Washington under Trump's leadership, prompting them to challenge EU directives aggressively. Possible measures include retaliatory tariffs targeting Europe's digital economy or attempts to delegitimize the EU's regulatory authority, intensifying existing frictions across the Atlantic. The EU's system, consisting of more than 100 tech-focused statutes and involving 270 regulators, has been criticized for unwieldy rules that might hamper innovation. Ex-Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi cautioned that overcomplicated restrictive laws hurt Europe's business climate. Trump's return, aligned with his preference for deregulation, might lure investment away from Europe and further complicate the EU's regulatory aspirations. Potential diplomatic flashpoints under a second Trump presidency. Certain flashpoints could become more fraught, affecting EU policy instability. President-elect Trump has hinted at reviewing U.S. support for Ukraine, implying future aid may hinge on Kiev entering peace talks with Moscow. As of June 2024, insiders reported Trump weighing an end to military aid if Ukraine resisted negotiations with Russia. Such a shift in American policy worries European allies. The EU might have to shoulder a larger share of Ukraine's defense burden, financially and militarily. This could strain EU resources and unity, as not all members share identical views on prolonged military backing. Trump's hard line on Beijing, marked by higher tariffs and fierce trade battles, could pressure the EU to re-evaluate its China strategy. The bloc has historically sought a balanced path, managing trade ties while noting security threats. Renewed U.S. pressure might push the EU to adopt a less neutral approach. This tension might drive divisions within the EU, especially for economies strongly linked to China, like Germany. Some states may resist measures that imperil crucial commercial relationships, as noted by the Financial Times, which observed that heightened trade frictions could fuel internal strife within the bloc. Migration challenges persist in the EU, accentuated by strife and environmental changes. Trump's restrictive immigration posture could resonate among certain European political factions, emboldening nationalist parties that advocate tougher border measures. The Hill described the shockwaves across Europe following Trump's victory, noting the rising confidence of populist and right-wing movements. Meanwhile, the EU's own migrant strategy calls for tighter rules, speedier deportations, and extraterritorial processing. Are European leaders overestimating these risks, or are their worries grounded in reality? Likely both, but given the turmoil of Trump's initial term, it's logical for EU officials to brace for multiple scenarios. New tariffs, potential Arctic designs, and forced shifts in energy policy are concrete threats to Europe's employment, economic growth, and ecological aspirations. Simply put, European capitals are making preparations, some openly, others behind the curtain, for a fresh era under America First. How well the EU can defend its interests while sustaining a functional partnership with Washington remains unanswered. Yet, those steering the ship in Brussels show no inclination to risk being caught unprepared. That's all for this video. Thank you for spending time with us today. If you found our content engaging or insightful, please show your support by liking and subscribing to stay connected with our community. Your support means a great deal to us. Another video from our channel is now on the screen if you'd like to continue exploring. We appreciate your company and hope to see you again soon.